Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle, and the Squats have had quite a week. Their army box launched and sold out in about a day, and 5 days later, they have received the largest, or I guess not the largest, but the most speedy and powerful FAQ probably in Games Workshop's history. It's pretty wild. What makes this really interesting though is alongside the nerf, Games Workshop has actually put out an apology video, which has to be the first. I have no memory of them ever actually admitting that they've ever made a mistake before, which hilariously in the video, they actually bring up that this is the very first mistake that they have ever made. Very tongue-in-cheek. The video is hilarious. I laughed out loud multiple times watching it. But it got me thinking, what actually happened to the squats? Did Games Workshop con us? Like, did they have this all planned out from the start? And what happens now? I just read the Leagues of Votann Codex, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I've not played a single game of 9th edition. I played a lot of 6th edition, a lot of 7th edition, a little bit of early 8th edition, which was a wonderful, beautiful, magical time in Games Workshop's history. The early 8th edition was just wonderful, but I haven't gotten around to playing 9th edition. Tons of Kill Team! I've played tons and tons of Kill Team, but not 9th edition. And so, reading the rules for the Votann, nothing really jumped out at me as super broken, but the rules have actually been leaked for a little while now, and so some people probably have gotten to play the Leagues of Votann either with the very, very few units available in the army box, or with proxy models, either in person or more likely on Tabletop Simulator. And there was whisperings that this codex was so powerful that it was going to be banned from tournaments. I looked into it and I could not find any actual data to support that it was banned, but it was that threat is probably one of the things that prompted Games Workshop to whip together a little video. But who are the squats? What is a squattening? What's going on? Well, the squats started with the original Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader back in 1988. I recently just read for the first time, the original Rogue Trader rulebook, which is a hot mess. The rules are laid out just completely randomly. The lore is thrown in, but it's really fun. Like, there's an unbelievable amount of rules. Like, if you shoot at something, or like if you charge something, or if you're in a vehicle and you decide to get out of the vehicle careens and you have to like roll a scatter die and see like where it ends up, and it can crash into things and cause more damage. It's wild. You almost need a DM to play Rogue Trader. You need 2 people playing with their models, and then you need a DM so that you can be like, what on earth happens here if I throw a grenade over a wall? Because it's a 10-step process and I don't know what to do. But the squats are going strong. From 1988, they were in Rogue Trader, and they did make the jump from Rogue Trader into 2nd edition when Games Workshop solidified into like a real game. And they were squatted not long after, which of course squatting means just being dropped from Warhammer. Which that is not strictly and only a squat problem. The Gene Stealer cult were also dropped, and the Sisters of Battle were almost dropped every single year for like 20 years before they remained popular, and so Games Workshop refreshed them. But there was a lot of rumors about why were the squats being dropped, because they were fairly popular and they were getting a lot of stuff for Epic 40K. But they weren't getting a codex for Warhammer 40K 2nd edition, and so people were wondering what was happening, and the rumor was that they weren't selling well, and that's why they were dropped. But in another rare moment, actually I suppose this would be the one other time Games Workshop admitted fault. Jervis Johnson, who worked for Games Workshop since the very inception, actually before the inception of Warhammer 40,000, he hopped into a forum for Epic 40K and explained exactly what happened to the squats. He explained that they weren't selling particularly poorly. There were a few other factions that were selling just as poorly as the squats. The real reason that they were dropped was because they just couldn't figure out a proper way to flesh them out. Obviously, they ported everything over from Warhammer Fantasy, so you had Eldar elves, you had orcs, you had regular humans, and all of these kind of took on a new life of their own in Warhammer 40K, but the squats never really did. They had a little bit of a mining thing going on, which they also did in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They sort of had a biker gang thing, but they ended up being a little bit more of a meme than a really interesting fleshed out force. And the creative team behind Warhammer 40,000 just couldn't get it to click. They couldn't figure out exactly what made the Votann tick, what they wanted to do with this faction to keep themselves interested. And so they just kept putting it off. And more people were asking for a squat codex, and they had less and less interest in actually writing the squats, and so they decided to drop them from the range. It's a really, really nice, candid explanation of what happened to the squats. And it ends with a very, very interesting quote. In the end, and it took years to really get to the root of the problem, this led to a realization that we were going to have to drop the squats in the squat form from the Warhammer 40k background. There was little point to having a major race that we weren't willing to make an army book for, and their inclusion in the background meant that people kept asking us when we'd get to the squat codex. Instead, we decided that we would write the squats out of the background by saying that their homeworld had been devoured by a Tyranid hive fleet. This would give us the option in the future to return to making a race based on the squat archetype in 40k. This race was given the name the Demiurge, and a certain amount of preliminary work was done to get a feel for what that race would be like. At present, the only hint of the Demiurge in 40k is the Demiurge spaceships in Battlefleet Gothic. However, we do have this race in our back pocket as a possible new race for 40k. And that would happen 30 years later with the Leagues of Votann. But is this just a cash grab? Did they just go through their sticky notes to see what was available to turn into a 40k race? I don't think so. I actually think they did a really good job with the Leagues of Votann. This codex, along with like Tau, really kind of feels like actual human beings in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Regular humans, like the Imperium of Mankind in Warhammer, are really weird. It's like Dark Age humans, but for some reason they existed in like a golden age that had an unbelievably amazing technology, and then 10,000 years later, actually more than 10,000 years later, because they never reached the peaks during the Emperor's reign on Terra and his Great Crusade. Like, humanity sucks, and everybody is a zealot, and nothing makes any sense. Where the Leagues of Votann, and to a certain extent the Tau, feel a lot more like if us humanity now just existed for, 40,000 years in 40k. The Leagues of Votann left old Earth, Terra, in generation ships, which is a really, really interesting, sort of a science fiction, sort of a real science idea, that in order to reach other galaxies and other planets, we would need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of space travel flying in these ships. And so the crew would have to like procreate, and you would have generations of people living, working, and dying on these spaceships as they make their way across the galaxy. And that is the Leagues of Votann. And the Leagues of Votann, Votann actually is essentially their god. Although like 12 times in this codex, they say that the Demiurge, the squats, don't call the Votann their gods. The Votann are Google. They are a supercomputer. A good way to think of it would be Deep Thought from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is a somewhat sentient, mega super ultra computer that has all data and all information that the Leagues have ever procured. It does all of the thinking for them. It contains lots of STCs, standard template constructs for how to construct things that they need, and they ask the Votann all of the questions that their race needs. When do we mine these asteroids? Do we take over this moon? What happens if this? What do we do if Y? All of these questions are answered by the Votann, and the Votann are clones, but not in the Star Wars 100 guys who all look like Boba Fett clones. These are clones where the Votann contains billions of lines of DNA of every squat that has ever lived and every tweak and change that it has ever made. And so at any given time, if they need 1 million squats, the Votann generates these squats, which is a really fun way to get a lot of variety in your squats, because it makes perfect sense if some of your squats have different looks and complexions and different like some of the squats have super skin, kind of like the Thing from Fantastic Four, where they can perhaps survive in the vacuum of space or under extreme radiation. And it's a really, really interesting idea. Also, the Votann have a lot of things in common with regular old dwarfs. They love mining. They tend to be a little bit thievish. They tend to take things that they want, although they are more than willing to barter and trade with other races for things. because they consider war a little bit wasteful. I think that Games Workshop has actually done an excellent job of bringing the squats to Warhammer 40k, and it's really a fun read because like it does read like a science fiction novel, a little bit like Dougal Dixon Man After Man, or that really creepy book, All Tomorrows. It's like a speculative history, a speculative future history of humanity. What would happen if we did live on these giant ships? Oh, and the robot helpers. The Votann creates robotic beings, a little bit like the droids from Star Wars. They don't have full sentience like the droids from Star Wars, but they are a huge part of the League society, and they have full citizenship. They are real, regular folks. They just happen to be robots instead of cloned humans, or cloned squats. They are not humans, they're humans, but they're squat humans. So I think Games Workshop did an excellent job. But did they do an excellent job with the rules? Well, seemingly not. There are currently 12 available units to the squats, and every single one of them got a price hike, or a points hike. Some of them really, really extreme, like the Hecaton Land Fortress going up from 230 points to 300 points, so a 70-point bump. And some things receiving very minor points increases, like the normal Hearthkin Warriors, the basic troop of the Votann, went up 1 point per model. I feel like a 1 point change 5 days after release doesn't seem warranted, but maybe they just wanted to be completionists, and they're like, well, we changed the points values for 11 of the 12 units, we might as well just go for the gold and do all 12 units. But other than changing the points values, they actually only changed the wording of one single rule. Even though it feels like a huge nerf, and Games Workshop has made it such a big deal, it actually doesn't feel like a huge change. No points changed to any of the weapons or equipments. The only rule change is for the judgment tokens. So the squat army has a gimmick, and I love a gimmick. The Necrons have reanimation protocols. I love a good gimmick. It's like something you can really sink your teeth into and makes your army feel very unique against all the others. And the League's Eye of the Ancestor judgment token system is very, very unique to them. If your enemy managed to kill a squad of the Votann, they are handed a judgment token. If they get off a psychic power, they're handed a judgment token. And at the end of every turn, if your opponent is on objectives, you can choose one of those units that's on objectives and hand them another judgment token. And there's a few other ways with stratagems and warlord or relics and warlord traits that you can do it too. It's really easy to get judgment tokens on the opponent's models. And these tokens make a big difference. If you have one token, your sixes, all of your sixes, every time you shoot, you get, if you are a fight, sixes auto wound. If the opponent has two of these judgment tokens, fives and sixes auto wound. And if you have three, fours, fives, and sixes auto wound. I really like this rule. I think it's really fun and it's really flavorful, and it's going to really help you out if you start to lose really badly because at least all of your enemy models are gonna have 2 or 3 judgment tokens on them, and so you get a little bit of help trying to like worm your way back from the jaws of defeat. The problem arose from this last little addendum to this rule, this last little tidbit that says that all of these tokens and all of these, auto wounding on 6s and 4s and 5s, for the purposes of rules that are triggered on a particular wound roll, the attack is considered to have been made with an unmodified wound roll of a 6. And that causes a lot of problems because there's other rules in this book that also go off on an unmodified wound roll of a 6. There's a bunch of war gear, and the magma railgun, which can be taken by some squat units, have a special thing that goes off. It's excess damage is not lost, it spills over into the unit on an unmodified roll of a 6. And all of a sudden, if an unmodified roll of a 6 is also a roll of a 4, 5, and 6, that causes some problems. So Games Workshop has changed the wording of that to mean that if you do your judgment tokens and you get your auto wounds, that's it. It doesn't spill over. For the purposes of other rules, it's treated as not having happened, which I think is good. I think a better system would have been to not have weapons like the magma rail, or have weapons like the magma rail and other weapons that go off on an unmodified wound roll of a 6 or unmodified hit roll of a 6. Just to change those to something else, maybe like, obviously it can't be a 1 because a 1 isn't always a miss. But that was really the problem, and Games Workshop fixed it by just saying, basically, if you want to use your judgment tokens, you have to not use other weapons that go off on a 6. Which I think is fine. It actually fixes everything except for the Magma Rail. I think the Magma Rail weapons, which you can take on Hekatron Land Fortress and you can take on your normal Hearthguard warriors, only 1 per squad, so it's not like the biggest deal in the whole world. But I do think that, I don't know, if I was putting together a squad army, I don't think I would go Magma Rail because of this change to the Judgment tokens. If they had had this all planned out from the very beginning, they probably would have only used the goes off on a 6 for Judgment only and not had it pop up here and there throughout the different units in the codex. But I do think that in terms of huge, giant nerf bat changes go, they did it very, very cleanly and neatly. They changed points values only on the unit bodies and not on any of the weapons, and 1 alteration to 1 rule is a really easy and concise way to fix it. There have been other FAQs and erratas that have been like little tiny changes here and there and rewrite this rule and change this rule and this no longer happens and that no longer happens. And those sorts of changes really are feel bad, where now nothing has changed for the squats. You read all the rules, you understand them, they all still operate the exact same way. It's just they maybe do a little less or cost a little more. And I think that that is a very good way to handle it. Games Workshop came out with a really, really nice, well-polished, good video, and they came out with these changes really, really quick. Did they have this plan? Did they con us from the start? No, I really don't think so. I can see it both ways. I can see it that maybe they did have this planned and they just wanted to sell a lot of army boxes and so they let the rules be good, but I also see a lot of evidence and I feel like I know Games Workshop. They just fly by the seat of their pants. One big part of why I think this particular squat problem happened is because in July, Games Workshop told all of their playtesters to go kick rocks. They got rid of them all. And no explanation of exactly why they did this. It probably just seemed like a lot more trouble than it was worth with constant rules leaks, a little bit of kind of bad behavior from like 40K coaches and some of the people who were these playtesters who weren't being paid, so why should they do a good job? And it didn't seem to actually help because there were codexes that came out that were great and there were codexes that came out somewhat broken with these playtesters. So I wonder if Games Workshop figured, forget it, we'll just do it ourselves. What's the worst that could happen? So the firing of their playtesters is probably a big part of why the Votann don't seem very well balanced upon release. And another reason why I don't think that they planned this from the very start is because they are putting this FAQ out now before they actually sell any of the models. The only thing that they've sold right now is the army box, which actually you can no longer purchase. It's sold out. We're still waiting on the Combat Patrol and all 12 of the individual units to be able to purchase separately. And if Games Workshop were evil monsters who wanted to, I mean, they sort of are, who want to get every single penny out of you because they want your money. They make models. But if they really wanted to get every single last penny out of you, they would have let this go on for 6 months and let them win tournaments and let them have these really powerful units and get people to buy lots and lots of models. I also just think it's not that big a deal. I'm making this up, but I think it's right. Like half of the people who buy Warhammer models don't play the game, or they play like a game like Kill Team, or like they collect an army, but really that they play Aeronautica Imperialis or Adeptus Titanicus. Most people don't actually play the game, and of the people who do play the game, armies take years of collecting, building, painting, figuring out. I mean, you have to play your army like 10 times before you really, really know what you're doing with it. And so 5 days of maybe you own 2 copies of the squat battle box, it's not really enough to get a sense of what's going on. I'm sure there are a few people out there who did see like the leaked rules and they're like, wow, that is really powerful. I need to be playing squats. Although I think that they're still going to be good even with the changes. They're not going to be nearly as good, but I think they're still going to be a really solid army. So I really don't think that Games Workshop has conned us. I loved their video. I thought it was awesome. And in between, James Workshop hamming it up for the camera, which I love that guy. Every Christmas, I can't wait for his video to drop. There was one Christmas, I think it was last year, where like the actor had like a busted lip, like he got in a fight the day before. It's hilarious. But sandwiched in between James Workshop hamming it up, they had a really nice just apology saying, we made the changes, we're sorry, and have fun, everybody. So I really liked their apology video. I thought it was very, very good. I like the changes to the squats. I do think that the new rule for the judgment tokens is actually a little bit, it's not as clear, but I think it's super easy. I just scribbled in the book. I've seen a few people, and of course the internet is prone to hyperbole, but I've seen a few people say that this book is now worthless because it's been FAQ'd. It took me a couple of minutes to Sharpie in the new points values and to scribble in the new rule. So I think that it's a little bit overblown, the amount of change or damage that is sometimes said to have been done by this FAQ. All in all, I'm really excited for the squats, more so than I was previously. I've read all the Warhammer community articles, and so I got a sense of the Votann, but actually having read the codex, now I get them. I feel like they're a good, solid addition to the Warhammer 40,000 catalog. Also, another cool thing about the squats, because where have the squats been this whole time? They live at the galaxy core near the black hole, which is another reason why they're squats. They need to be super dense and muscular to survive the crazy radiation and gravity at the center of the universe. And hilariously enough, it says that they really don't meet outsiders that often. They have, because you have to be able to fight the battles. But orcs can also survive in the core. And so they're constantly fighting the orcs. And I just love that little tidbit that the Leagues of Votann, they're living their best life, hidden away from the other races of the galaxy, but they still have to deal with the orcs because everyone just has to deal with the orcs. I really like the squats. I really like the Games Workshop apology video. It's been a really fun week. I've really been enjoying the Votann, and you know what else I've been enjoying? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have lots of cool STLs, both miniature and terrain, to populate wargaming tables, all hosted by Comics, Games, and Things. If you sign up, there's a welcome pack that includes Dawn of War, Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Eldar terrain. We also make one extra episode of Eon's Battle a week where we critique viewer miniatures, and we have weekly Discord hangouts. We also have merch, link in the description. I'm really getting a kick out of the Leagues of Votann. Please leave a comment below what you think of the Leagues of Votann and how you thought about Games Workshop's apology video. I really liked it, but I know there's a lot of other opinions out there. Thanks for watching.